at this point, as they are still trying to find the person or persons responsible for this shooting.
Hopefully we do learn more information. When we hear from Wauwatosa police, they have informed us there is a news conference set for 5:45 away from the Mayfair Mall premises, as this still is an active situation, as we've been mentioning. So we're hoping to get some more concrete information then. But in terms of the suspects, so we know the perpetrators at large. We have gotten official word on that. The scene is very telling of that as well. But in terms of the suspect's motivation, you know, we don't know anything at this point. We don't know if it was one person, multiple people. Was it a domestic situation, possibly a disgruntled employee? We don't know. So this is all information that we're hoping to learn as the hours and days go by, as we learn more and more information about this. But 5:45, that's what we're being told at this point. But again, it's still a ways off, so that very well could continue to be pushed back depending on what develops here at the scene. We have been hearing from the FBI. They're supporting the local law enforcement here. There are neighboring agencies that are on site as well. Brookfield, West Allis, State Patrol is also on scene. So it is an all hands on deck situation. And again, think of the people who are still stuck inside this mall at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, just wanting to get home to their families, but they can't. We're hoping they're all safe in there. They're being told to shelter in place wherever they were. A lot of them are back in storage areas, we're hearing, maybe in the back mall hallways that most of us don't ever enter. But they're sheltering in place until they are told by law enforcement that it is safe to leave the area. Cassidy Williams standing by right now. You're decently close to the Macy's. I know all the flashing lights are there behind you, but have you been told to kind of move back at this point like some of our other crews have been?
Yeah, we were told to move back and kind of step away from the parking lot, so we're on kind of the public property of the grass that is here. But you can still see how much of a police presence there is in front of the Macy's. Also kind of standing where we're standing are some people waiting because they have loved ones still inside, hoping to be reunited with them shortly. The people I've talked to have noticed, have been able to call and make sure that their loved ones are okay. So there are still people inside of the mall. There are still cars in the parking lot that are clearly from earlier today. Worth noting, we're only 1 week away from Black Friday, traditionally one of the busiest days of the year for a mall like this. I was here at the mall reporting last year on Black Friday. Now just a week before, it is a very different scene, just covered in blue and red lights as they investigate this shooting. And again, we're hoping to learn more from Wauwatosa police here within the hour to know exactly how many people were shot and how they are doing. But the mayor says that the injuries do not appear to be life-threatening.
Cassidy, thanks. Let's go over to Brett Lemoyne. Brett, you're on North Avenue. You've had an interesting perspective because you've been talking to workers who've been walking out, and I'm really struck by how this sounded, because you've been talking to some workers who've been at the food court in the middle of the mall. They were able to hear what was going on inside that mall. I'm told we're going to have to wait on Brett a little bit because he's actually talking to a witness right now. Do we have Angelica Sanchez? She's also been talking to family members, including one whose family member worked at a kiosk and was struck. An immigrant from Pakistan owns a couple of those kiosks inside the mall, one outside of the Macy's there, and that's when he was struck. Angie, what are you hearing?
Yeah, that's right, Ben. We spoke to that family that young man who said that it was his uncle who was shot twice in the leg. And, you know, as soon as he heard of the shooting, he tells us that he just ran out here. He just needed to be here. This family adores their uncle, and it's absolutely heartbreaking for them to know that he is among the victims here today. Of course, the moment of good news is that none of these injuries appear to be life-threatening, but still, it's absolutely heartbreaking to hear of anybody be the victim of senseless gun violence. We're approaching the holidays, and really the big question for everyone is, why do this? What could possibly have been the motive for something like this? You know, I spoke to another woman. She was just trying to buy a coat for herself and for her son. You know, the holidays are coming up, and to just have to experience something like this is absolutely heartbreaking. So yes, we spoke to that other family who has a loved one who is currently being treated at the hospital. But again, the good news is that none of these injuries at this time appear life-threatening.
The question is right now is why? Why did all of this unfold on a Friday afternoon right before the Thanksgiving holiday, as this mall would seemingly be maybe more packed than it typically would be during the week, or maybe at a different time. Right around 3 o'clock is when we started getting word that all of this was unfolding. We were hearing multiple victims shot over the police scanners. And of course, once we started getting information confirmed, we knew that this was a very serious and active situation. But again, we don't know anything about the suspect. We don't know if it's more than one person. We don't know if this was somebody who had worked in the mall, or maybe they had a loved one who was in the mall and it's a domestic situation. These are all things that we will eventually learn. We will eventually hear from police once they continue their investigation. But the focus at this moment is apprehending that suspect, is getting that person into police custody, because at that time, all of the people who are inside of the mall being told to shelter in place, all of the people who can't get their vehicles out of the parking lots, and all of the loved ones who still haven't heard from their family members who might be inside will finally get to breathe a little sigh of relief. So we are far from that moment. Again, 5:45, that's when we're being told we are getting a briefing. The first briefing we are getting from Wauwatosa Police. We'll, of course, bring that to you live here on air, as well as be streaming it on all of our social media platforms and our website. But at this point, what we can confirm, perpetrator is still at large, very much an active scene, Ben.
This is coming from Fox 6's Aaron Mabin. New information. Mother tells me she was inside the Macy's shoes department. That's right inside those doors there on the north side of the mall, as she was with her children, and that is when she heard rapid gunfire. So the shooting was obviously heard by everybody inside the mall, but there were lots of children inside the mall as well. Good information coming from Aaron Mabin, who's hearing from more witnesses on scene. Cassie Williams has some new information. Cassie, what have you learned?
Yeah, similar to Aaron, I spoke to a shopper who was inside of Macy's at the time. She said she was just in the doors, and when she first heard something, it sounded like, she said, like one of those chandeliers or a lighting fixture had fallen and smashed. That's how loud it was. And then there were a number of gunshots, and you can see still just such a large police presence, specifically in front of the Macy's here at the mall. They've been here for several hours now. The parking lot is slowly clearing out as people are allowed to exit the mall, but there are still people here waiting for loved ones that are inside. Several ambulances have left the scene, and we're still waiting to learn exactly how many people were shot. But every shopper I've spoken with says it was multiple gunshots, that there was gunshots first inside of Macy's, and that the suspect may have walked out and then fired more gunshots. Talked to a man who was on the phone with his daughter and heard gunshots. But luckily, everyone I've spoken to, their family members are okay, and injuries here are all expected to be non-life-threatening.
Hey, Cassie, the parking lot behind you, it appears there are a few less cars. Have you seen anyone that's been able to leave the parking lot since you've been on scene?
Yeah, there have been people that have been released from the mall and have come to their cars and left since we first got here. So that's why it is slowly emptied out.
This is a big mall, 1.3 million square feet, 160 stores. We're being told by law enforcement they are going store by store, searching for the suspect or suspects. Another one of our reporters is live on the scene.
Aaron Mabin.
Aaron Mabin, let's go live now to you.
Yeah, hey, Ben and Stephanie, we're just a few feet away from the mic stands where that news conference will be happening about 5:45. We're here in the southwest corner of the Mayfair Mall area. Here in Wauwatosa, traffic not a problem here, but it's on the north side where there is such a backup. Took quite some time to get here. I do want to tell you about that story. I just got off the phone with a woman who was inside the shoe department at Macy's when all of a sudden she heard a pop, and she actually thought that some sort of metal was hitting the ground. And then she heard that rapid gunfire that we keep hearing about today. She says she immediately grabbed her children. But there was that moment of sheer panic, she tells me, because her daughter had headphones on and actually did not hear the gunfire at all. So the moment of grabbing her son, getting her daughter's attention, and then sprinting, she says, out of Macy's. She was in the shoe department where it happened. She actually says when she was getting out of the mall area, people were still walking in, and she says her young son was telling people, do not go inside because someone's shooting. So just, you really get goosebumps when you hear these stories of people who were near the gunfire. She tells me she did not see the person. Here's more of that conversation. Take a listen.
From what I experienced, I was in the shoe department at Macy's. Had my kids with me. My son is 8 and my daughter's 12. And I just tried on some shoes. I put them back in the box. I was about to walk up to the cash register, and I hear this pop sound. It sounded like something dropped, like something metal or something. And then right after that first one, it was just, pow, 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 pow. And I looked at the cashier. She just took off running. And at that moment, it was like, oh, that is a gunshot. And as I turned around, I saw people from everywhere, in the store just running. So I start to run. My son starts to run, and I'm looking to see where my daughter is, and she's sitting in one of the chairs, and she has her headphones on, so she didn't hear anything. And I was just so in shock, I couldn't even scream or anything like that. And she finally noticed that people were running, and she got up and ran too. And people were running past the nearest exit. I think they were just so confused and shocked. And so my kids and I darted out the exit closest to us, and we just ran and ran and ran. We had no idea where we were going. We were just running.
That was Aisha Adams Roberts. Again, she was inside Macy's, the shoe department, when all that gunfire just started coming, and they ran for their lives. Ben and Stephanie.
In situations like this, Aaron, they do teach you run, hide, fight in that order. So they did the right thing. Aaron, thank you.
An 8-year-old telling people don't go inside, there's a shooting. Aaron, when you said you get goosebumps, I literally got goosebumps when you said that out loud. That is something we should not hear. Hey, let's go over to Brett Lemoyne. He's got new information. He's on the North Avenue side of the mall. Brett, I'm really struck by how calm everybody is that you're talking to, who's been through some very chaotic moments.
Yeah, Ben, but when you look in their eyes, you can tell that they are really shaken up about what has happened here. I want you to just look over to my right here. Former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark is here on scene. Now, I don't want to draw any connections, but we do know that there was a support freedom and liberty rally that was planned unsanctioned here at this very spot, North Avenue and Mayfair Road in Wauwatosa, for tomorrow. But yes, Ben, certainly there have been a lot of people that we've been talking to who have been coming out of the mall really shaken by what has happened, and I think maybe have not processed yet fully what has happened. But we heard from a man just a little while ago who heard the gunshots, said that it was calm for about 2 seconds while everyone kind of processed what was happening, and then all of a sudden someone shouted, "Run, run, run," and then obviously people realized that those were in fact gunshots that they had heard. We heard someone describe at least 5 or 6 gunshots in rapid succession. So we're still out here in this area. We've been pushed back as well because police, as we've been saying, have not been letting people in or out of this particular area. Former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark has left. He did not want to speak with us on camera tonight, but I thought it was noteworthy to point out that he was here. Back to you.
All right, Brett, appreciate it. Thanks for that update.
Our Angelica Sanchez, she's also been speaking with witnesses, and it kind of just reiterates that same story we've been hearing over and over again. A first sound of gunshots. Everyone's not exactly sure what happened. Did something fall? Did something break? There's more gunshots, and that's where it rang clear to a lot of people, and people you've spoken with personally, Angelica.
Yeah, that's right, guys. In fact, one of the first people that I spoke with, she says that she was just at the doctor's office, and you quickly start, getting either word that the shooting happened or you heard of the shooting. And everybody, you had 2 choices. You were either going to make a run for it or you were going to seek shelter. And so there were some people that made a run for it, but they were separated from their loved ones. So I just want to show you what's happening behind me here. As I mentioned before, we've been pushed back from this, where we originally were, which was a little closer to the Macy's. Still very heavy law enforcement here on the scene, and shoppers telling me that they're still waiting for their loved ones who are inside. One woman that I just spoke to about 10-15 minutes ago telling me that her niece was still inside the mall and she was being escorted outside by law enforcement through some type of what she described as secret hallways, but I'm sure it was just the back sides of the store that lead to another and probably more safer exit, as we know that a shooter is still at large. Now, we're also awaiting word on a press briefing that's supposed to take place around 5:45 to get a better idea on what law enforcement know. Of course, course, an image like this has not only gained the attention of the community, but the entire country, as I have now seen for the last 2 hours. And we're seeing, people from across the Midwest, news stations from across the Midwest coming here to this area. So, of course, this is getting a lot of attention, and people want to know what is going on. And again, the motive for why something like this would unfold. On a Friday, people were out shopping right before the holidays. To have to deal with something like this, a lot of people were still trying to catch their breath, and we appreciate every single person that took the time to speak with us and try to give us clarity on what they saw. And most of all, one woman, she said, I just want people to know what's going on inside, because she understands that a lot of people are worried for loved ones that are inside this mall. So again, we're here on the other side of Mayfair Road as we are awaiting a press briefing that is scheduled around 5:45 to get a better idea on what took place here today.
Just about 30 minutes out from that press briefing. Of course, we will bring that to our viewers live when that does in fact happen. Angelica, thank you.
A lot of people seeing parts of the mall they never knew existed today. Let's go to Bill Miston. He is near where that press briefing will happen. Bill, I know you talked with law enforcement this afternoon. What are you hearing?
Well, what we do know is that law enforcement has a perimeter set up around Mayfair Mall. My photojournalist and I, before we got over here, we know that there's even law enforcement in the Blue Mountain Country Club, which is just to the east of Mayfair Mall. I'm at the corner of North and Mayfair, southwest from the mall property, and to the east of the mall is a fence line, and Blue Mountain Country Club is over there. And from that vantage point, we were able to see that there was a number of police vehicles on the northeast corner of that mall. It's kind of hard to see from where all of our other crews are. We weren't allowed to be there for very long, but that was what we could see from that vantage point. And it did appear that there was an unmarked vehicle, a police vehicle, in the country club property that was monitoring that property line between those areas. So what we should know, hopefully, in the next half hour or so is when police are scheduled to give us an update to the events that transpired here this afternoon. What we do know is that State Patrol, FBI, the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm, all here. Multiple people were shot, according to Wauwatosa Mayor Dennis McBride, but those injuries are believed to be non-life threatening, but that suspect is still at large. So once we do know more information, which we should get, hopefully these times they can be moved around here a bit, we should know in about a half an hour. Ben, Steph?
Interesting perspective just to know how far away police are really staging from this area. All right, Bill, thanks for that new information.
We are also hearing, actually on Twitter now, from Mayfair itself, saying we are disheartened and angered that our guests and tenants were subject to this violent incident that happened today. We are thankful for our partners at the Wauwatosa Police Department, and we're cooperating with this investigation, of course. Our Cassidy Williams, she is standing by now. Cassidy, we know a lot of people have actually been allowed out of the mall with officers in tow, of course, safely. And you've been speaking with some of them as they've been making their ways to their vehicles.
And I'm actually here with Christopher right now, who was working inside of the mall when that shooting happened. Tell me kind of what happened, what you heard.
Okay, so I clocked in at exactly 3 o'clock. I was in the back talking to my manager or whatever. And then so as soon as I got done talking, like around like 3:05 or something like that, he all I heard was like pop, 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 like 5 shots. And then I ran to his office. I was like, Sean, they shooting. And then he was like, And then after that happened, I see plenty of people coming like because okay, Macy's and Abercrombie's like right there, so I just seen people like rushing where it's at employees only at like customers and stuff like that. And yeah, I grabbed my jacket and I just like jetted out the back door with them because I didn't know what was going on at first. I just came to the mall and clocked in. Like, I'm just glad that it happened like while I was in the back, because I could have been like in the midst of it while it was happening right there, because it happened around like 3 o'clock.
What's going through your head in those moments when you hear those gunshots?
I literally blacked out, but like I would always know if I hear gunshots, run. So I ran right out the back door, and like where everybody else was coming, like running from. So yeah. What's
your reaction to this happening where you work?
I was just like shook, like literally, like I didn't know what to do at first, because okay, so as soon as I came around the corner from talking with my boss Sean, I see plenty, like I said, I seen plenty of people running like towards the back entrance of our store. And after I seen them, I like literally grabbed my jacket and like ran with them. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going on. All I heard was gunshots. I didn't know if somebody got shot, like an employee or something, because it literally sounded like it was inside of our store, but it was like right in front of Abercrombie and Fitch and like the side of Macy's.
As an employee at Mayfair, do you have any training for something like this?
I didn't get trained for this. I didn't get trained. I basically like just went through what I felt was the best way to go, you know? Yeah.
And kind of, how are you doing now? Kind of now you've had the couple hours. Have you been made contact with other friends that work inside the mall? How are people doing?
People are doing fine. Like my friends, we just went to go grab some food and stuff because like we was still like just shook, like staring out the space like this really happened, and like this could have been like it could have went a whole different way if we wasn't like in the store, you know. But everybody's doing great. I had plenty of my friends contacting me, checking on me and stuff, and family like from Mississippi, because I am from Mississippi, and like yeah.
And even in Mississippi, they're hearing about this shooting and reaching out to you.
They're watching it on their TV and looking it up on social media and Instagram and like Google and stuff like that.
Well, we're glad that you're okay and your friends are okay, and also glad to hear that it seems all injuries are non-life-threatening in this shooting, and we should be getting an update from police shortly.
A quick question for that witness there, Cassidy. How are they able to make it out of the store? Like out the front entrance, the back entrance, and did he see anything?
Okay, so they're asking the Angers how you kind of made it out. It sounded like that you were kind of in an employee-only kind of back area when this happened.
Yes, ma'am. So, so it's like it's a door. It's like it's a door that you where the employees are at. So, we got this back door like where you can take trash out or anything, and it's like it goes out to the back parking lot, like by AMC Theaters and like the office, Mayfair office or whatever. So I ran way to the end of the road. I grabbed my jacket, ran all the way to the end of the road. We have our walkies, and they're talking to me like, Chris, get out of there, get out of there. There's an active shooting. They thought I was in the bathroom or something, but I was like literally already out, you know, on the end of the road. They was like, Chris, get out of there, get out of there. So then they gave us like orders to go all the way like around the mall and go to like the Cheesecake Factory, and then we just met up and like just keeping up on updates and stuff with the news and stuff.
Did you see anything?
I didn't see anything. The only thing I seen was people running, like literally, and like cops and the helicopter and stuff. That's the only thing I really seen. I didn't see like the guy, but a coworker, her name is Sasha. She was in Women's One in the front, and she said she seen a white guy with a black coat and a hood and like a beanie or something like that. And she said, well, that's all she told us. And then we heard that he had like an AK-47 or something like that. I don't know, but that's like all the information that they gave me.
Thank you so much. And again, we're still waiting to hear from police more about the suspect. We know the suspect is at large, but police have not given any details about who exactly they are looking for.
It's important to point that out. All right, Cassidy, thank you.
I want to go to Hannah Jewell because we're seeing some fascinating images, Hannah, on Twitter. You just shared a video. A lot of people are finding themselves in parts of the mall that maybe they did not know exist as they're sheltering in place.
That's true, Ben. They have access to the back of the store now where they're trying to shelter in place and stay safe right now. They've been told that they are waiting for law enforcement to come by and clear them to leave. They were told this about a half hour, 45 minutes ago. Still, at this particular store we're showing you, they have not had law enforcement come by. It's going on almost 2 hours now that they've been hiding in the back of the store, charging their phones, trying to get word out to loved ones that they're doing okay. They haven't seen or heard anything since this all began. When this happened, when the shots rang out, they said they heard multiple shots, rapid fire, quick shots. Then there was a pause, then more shots. So they're still staying there. They're trying to stay back in the back of the store, but they say they haven't seen much action going on since this all began. They didn't see any victims. They didn't see exactly what happened. We have been seeing a couple people just trickle out from the mall and have been able to talk to a few people off camera. Also concerning some kids were inside. They heard this as well. They're shaken up. So a lot of people just trying to clear the area as best as they can right now, and law enforcement also trying to keep people back because this is still a very active scene. We haven't seen much change on this end of the mall, just a lot of law enforcement parked. We saw a couple law enforcement members with what appeared to be long rifles on top of the Macy's store about a half hour or so ago. And as you said, we're still waiting for that update from law enforcement to come in a little bit.
Yeah, and that update will happen, we are told, at 5:45 tonight, just outside the Mayfair Mall. Obviously a fluid situation. When the press conference happens, we will bring it to you live. We have seen tactical teams. They've gone inside the mall right near the entrance you're seeing. This is the north entrance here at the Mayfair Mall, right at the Macy's. And the tactical units, we are told, are going from store to store. 1.3 million square feet of retail space inside this mall, and there are 160 retailers. So it could take some time for some of those workers who we just saw in Hannah's video to be cleared out of the mall.
Let's go live now to our Brett Lemoyne, who is with another witness to all of this.
Yeah, Stephanie, I'm with Tatiana here, who just left Mayfair Mall. You said you heard the gunshots. What happened?
I was just worked like regular, and then all of a sudden I started hearing gunshots, and me and my coworker, we just ran to the other side and got on the floor, and we saw everybody running, and then a lady told us we needed to get out, and so we hopped over the counter and just escaped to the nearest exit.
And Tatiana, where do you work in Mayfair?
Macy's.
At Macy's. And so that was what we're hearing was pretty close.
It was.
Do you know how many gunshots?
It was over 10.
Wow. And were there people that you saw that were injured?
No, I didn't see anyone injured.
And it must have been frightening. I mean, just getting out of there. You said you jumped over a counter.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And so what's taking place now? I mean, you just left a few moments ago. What's going on inside the mall right now?
We don't know. We were told that we were not able to go back in, and it's a shutdown. So anybody who's in there is in there for the night, and anyone who's out there is out for the night. We still don't know how people can exit and leave. Some people still haven't gotten their stuff, so.
And I saw when you were coming out, you were on your phone. I imagine you're getting lots of calls from parents and loved ones.
Yes, my parents are checking up on me.
My goodness. And just to think that you have to tell them about what happened is heartbreaking. And Tatiana, we're so glad that you're okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
you could see, my goodness, poor Tatiana, she's got a comforter over her. Obviously, she was not prepared to leave work in this manner here to come out to a cold night after something so horrific that happened in her workplace. Back to you.
We've seen so many people walking out with blankets around them as well, those who just couldn't grab their coats in the midst of all the chaos. We are hearing from Children's Wisconsin tonight. Just a quick note here that the Mayfair Urgent Care, it is going to be closed this evening, so we just want to make a note to our viewers that the Children's Urgent Care in Mayfair is closed.
Let's go to Aaron Maven, because he's been talking to some witnesses here, some inside the Mayfair store. You know, some people with their kids inside this afternoon when this shooting happened. Aaron, what have you learned?
Well, Ben, not long ago I talked to a mother who was in the Macy's shoe department when she heard gunfire, and she describes it at first as sounding like a piece of metal hit the ground, and then she started to hear that rapid gunfire, and she grabbed her 2 young children and really just sprinted out of Macy's. So right now we are just a few feet away from where that news conference is going to happen. We're seeing media not only from the Milwaukee area but also the Chicago area, and that's also where we will hear more from police to get a better understanding of what happened. But again, a lot of witnesses really describing it, the sound and the sheer panic that they felt. That mother actually told me that after she grabbed her children, she went in the car, and they didn't go straight home. They just had to drive around for a while to really debrief and talk about what they were feeling and what they had seen. So a lot of people still processing what has happened here at Mayfair Mall. Ben and Stephanie.
And I think that's important to note that, I mean, there could have been hundreds of people inside the mall at the time, and just the chaos that comes after witnessing something like this, it can stick with you, and it's really important to talk about it in the coming days. So it's great to hear that that mother was doing that right from the get-go. I think a lot of people, Aaron, probably maybe need to do that today, find a way to decompress.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And she said her son is only 8 years old, and she described the situation as him having a meltdown. So really going through a wave of emotion after a very scary afternoon.
8 or 18, I think anyone would have a meltdown in that situation. I mean, it's just, it's so traumatizing, and yeah, certainly a lot to process. Aaron, thank you for that. We have been hearing from many other people who have been coming out of Mayfair. Our Angelica Sanchez with one live right now.
Yeah, guys, well, not at this present moment, but we have been speaking with plenty of shoppers who are still just so stunned by what they've heard or what they've seen right here at the scene behind me. Again, we're on the other side of Mayfair Road, and shoppers just telling me that, you know, they were doing a simple trip and just in a matter of seconds, everything changed. You know, we spoke with one woman who was inside Macy's and just hearing employees running around trying to communicate that something was wrong and people either needed to head for the door or they needed to shelter where they were and find a safe location. Again, we are still waiting for a press conference, and as Aaron has been mentioning, we're awaiting more information on this incident. But really, the shoppers, you know, they are coming out here right before the holidays, getting some shopping done when something like this unfolds. And one shopper that we spoke with tells us that her niece is still inside the mall and was being escorted by law enforcement, which obviously is such a sigh of relief. But to have to go through this, you know, she didn't have time, the shopper I spoke with, to get her coat. You know, it was really just you either have an opportunity to get to the door or you have to find a safe location. And she's telling us that her niece is being escorted by law enforcement. We're really hoping that they reunited, because when something like this happens, the worst thing is when you're separated from your loved ones or don't know where they are. So I know that many of our viewers have loved ones that either came here shopping or are employees of this mall. And, you know, we're with you right now in your moment of worry, and we're hoping to hear more from law enforcement. Again, what we know right now is that multiple people are injured, but no fatalities. Unfortunately, the shooter is still at large, which, as I've mentioned before, is the reason why we were pushed back, because law enforcement said that this parking lot was still unsafe. We've seen them canvassing the area around the mall, checking every corner. We saw them on the roof, making sure that this scene is secure, as we are waiting to hear more information on what they know and potentially, hopefully, know more information about the shooter. There's lots of cameras around this mall, so I'm sure if there was a surveillance camera where the shooting happened, they might even have an image. Whether they release that to us is another story. Back to you.
Very good point to make there. And just for our viewers, just so that you have an understanding as to what the vantage point is that you're looking at here, this is the northwest side of Macy's, the very north end of Macy's. Maggiano's is kind of to the right there, off screen. This is the staging area. This is the main point of entrance and exit that we have been seeing law enforcement going in with their tactical gear in tow. They've also, we've seen several EMS personnel going inside, bringing out stretchers with no people on them. So we're, again, still awaiting that press conference set for 5:45. It's going to be away from the premises, which makes sense because this still is an active situation. But just to kind of give you a perspective as to where at the mall this is happening, this is right at the Macy's, the very north end of the mall.
It is 5:31. We've now passed 5:30. Let's reset here at Fox 6 on your Friday night. We've got some new information from Cassie. We know from the Wauwatosa Police Department, multiple people were injured inside the mall at the north end. They were taken to the hospital, but none of the victims of injuries appear to be life-threatening. We are expecting to hear from law enforcement in the next 15 minutes. And Cassie, I know in the meantime, you've been hearing from these employees and shoppers who continue to trickle out.
Yeah, every employee and shopper tells a similar story, hearing just a number of gunshots, some either dropping to the ground or running out, just everyone trying to get to safety. You can see from here, we're now been pushed back across the street, but just still all the red and blue lights outside of Macy's as this investigation is still very active. There are still people inside of the mall. People have been slowly trickling out as police have been going from store to search, as the suspect is still at large. Again, just recently spoke to an employee who was inside, says they heard a number of gunshots and they just saw people just running, customers, shoppers running through the employee-only area, just trying to find an exit to get out to safety. But again, luckily, we've been told that all injuries appear to be non-life-threatening, and we've been speaking to multiple witnesses. You can hear this one about just describing what they heard.
It's that fight or flight reaction, instinct, just the sort of disbelief that this is actually happening. And I had my mother with me, so obviously great concern for her and her safety. And we were both, I just went into the mode of let's get to a safe place as quickly as possible and make sure my mom is okay.
Now, that woman you just heard from was actually inside of Macy's when she first heard the gunshot. They had just walked through the doors when they heard a few. First, she thought it was a light that had fell down. That's how loud it was, and they had dropped to the ground. But luckily, they did make it out safely. And again, we're waiting. We should get an update from police here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're within 15 minutes. All right, Cassie, thank you. As we continue to take a live picture of the store, we're still seeing a very active scene inside. Bill Miston, I know we're waiting for law enforcement to give us that update. What are you seeing from your vantage point?
Well, Ben, as we said the last time around, what we do know is that police have a large area cordoned around the property of the mall. From where we had been earlier in the night, there were law enforcement officers that were, positioned to the east side of the mall property along the property line between the mall and Blue Mound Country Club. And as this investigation is unfolding, police not only are going to be taking a look at what transpired at the mall, but also any type of information that might be in the surrounding area. What I can tell you is that I've seen police officers going into at least one business nearby, going into that business, which is closed. It's a Walgreens. And coming out, what I do know is that there's going to be a lot of moving pieces to be looking at here to try and figure out, as this suspect is still at large, did they leave or are they still inside? And so that is something that law enforcement is going to be doing. Also, we're still awaiting more information from police here within the next 15 minutes. That is when police are supposed to update us on this incident that started unfolding this afternoon, where multiple people were shot. Thankfully, non-life-threatening injuries is what we're being told by Wauwatosa Mayor Dennis McBride, and still a large amount of activity here. I am standing across the street on the southwest side of the mall property, where all of that is still unfolding, and just several feet away from where we're supposed to get an update from police here shortly. Ben?
All right, appreciate it. Mayfair Mall, it's got a history of things happening, nothing to this scale. It was just a year ago that there was a large fight inside the mall right around Thanksgiving, and that really clamped down some of the parental controls that we talked about earlier. They've been in place for a while, but they were loosely enforced up until about a year ago when that big fight happened. Obviously, there was a police-involved shooting with a Wauwatosa police officer who just resigned. Officer Joseph Mensah shot and killed Alvin Cole at this mall here, and that was ruled justified recently. And then just back in October, there was a shooting where 3 people in the parking lot were injured. Police say it was a drug deal gone bad. All of those injuries were non-life-threatening, and arrests were made.
So all of this started happening around 3 o'clock this afternoon, and that's actually when Mayfair's parental guidance required policy goes into effect, meaning that anyone 17 and younger has to have an adult there with them to supervise them from 3 p.m. Friday on there through the weekend. This was actually implemented back in 2007 as a way to deal with the concern of crime and the disruptions that have been caused by unaccompanied minors. We are getting a tweet now from Mayfair Mall itself saying, "We are disheartened and angered that our guests and tenants were subject to this violent incident today. We are thankful for our partners at the Wauwatosa Police Department, and we are cooperating with them as their investigation develops. Mayfair is closed at this time." It is important to note law enforcement is asking everyone to stay away from Mayfair Mall if at all possible. We do know there are loved ones out there who may have family members who are still inside sheltering in place. Law enforcement is asking you to at least give them some space. They understand your concern, but give them some space because this still is an active situation. We know the perpetrator is still at large. They've been searching this mall. They've told us they're going through every single store inch by inch looking for the suspect. But again, we're assuming the suspect is inside the mall, right? Because of the staging area, because of all the law enforcement presence here, but we're not exactly sure. The suspect may have fled. So again, all of this information, we're hoping to at least learn some more concrete details when we're expecting to hear from Wauwatosa Police in just 7 minutes from now.
And law enforcement obviously they're going to go inch by inch here with their tactical teams. We're now hearing from Frederick, where we know some of the victims were taken. Let's take that image live if we can from Frederick Hospital. Do we have that? Okay, we don't have that just yet, but we do know that some of the victims' non-life-threatening injuries would have been taken, which not very far down the road, Frederick Hospital. Obviously, that's a Trauma 1 center. Some of the best trauma centers in the country are Trauma 1s, and we're lucky to have one in our area. Here is the statement from the hospital. Shortly after 3 p.m. today, Frederick Hospital and Children's Wisconsin were notified of a shooting at Mayfair Mall. Can that come back up? There we go. Both hospitals' trauma teams were prepared to receive patients. Additional questions should be directed to law enforcement. So not a lot of information from Frederick. They're not saying if people were treated at the hospital or how many, but they were prepared. Let's go to Aaron Mabin's got some new information. Aaron, what are you learning?
Well, we're here on the south side of the mall. It's where we're awaiting that news conference from the Wauwatosa Police Department. We have about a dozen or so news crews here as we all await that new information from the Wauwatosa Police Department. I'm also awaiting some new information, learning that there possibly are some people still sheltering inside the mall right now. Someone just a few stores away from Macy's sheltering expected to give me a call at any moment. It was a little bit ago that I got off the phone with a woman who was inside Macy's, a shoe department, with her daughter and her young son when they heard the gunfire, and then they ran for their lives. This whole afternoon has been a wave of emotion for them. Take a listen to my conversation with her.
From what I experienced, I was in the shoe department at Macy's, had my kids with me. My son is 8 and my daughter's 12. And I just tried on some shoes. I put them back in the box. I was about to walk up to the, cash register, and I hear this pop sound. It sounded like something dropped, like something metal or something. And then right after that first one, it was just, pow, 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 pow. And I looked at the cashier. She just took off running. And at that moment, it was like, oh, that is a gunshot. And as I turned around, I saw people from everywhere, in the store just running. So I start to run. My son starts to run, and I'm looking to see where my daughter is, and she's sitting in one of the chairs, and she has her headphones on. So she didn't hear anything. And I was just so in shock, I couldn't even scream or anything like that. And she finally noticed that people were running, and she got up and ran too. And people were running past the nearest exit. I think they were just so confused and shocked. And so my kids and I darted out the exit closest to us, and we just ran and ran and ran. We had no idea where we were going. We were just running.
Quite the description right there. That was Aisha Adams Roberts, who is inside of Mayfair Mall when she says that gunfire started. She said that they ran out so fast she really couldn't even take a look behind her to look at the person who was firing that weapon. We're going to get new information from the Wauwatosa Police Department in just a few minutes. We're just a few feet away from that, and we'll have it live. Ben and Stephanie?
In that moment, you just need to run. Don't worry about looking behind you. That's what our personal defense experts always tell us in mass shooting situations like this one. Aaron, thank you. We've been hearing, Ben, the same story echoed time and time again from all of these witnesses that we have been speaking with and our reporters have been speaking with, those who are finally making their way out of the mall after being hunkered down for the past 2.5+ hours inside Mayfair, not having any idea what's going on. We saw some video from our Hannah Jewell, some video that she actually tweeted out from somebody who was in one of those back storage areas of one of the retail shops inside the mall, a place that most of us never get a chance to see. And everyone is more or less just waiting. Their cell phones are plugged into the wall. We assume they're trying to get in touch with loved ones to let them know, hey, we're good. We just have to wait to be cleared by law enforcement. So that is the situation that we're in right now. This is the staging area. Again, it's still active. The perpetrator is at large. And here's some more of that video that I was just speaking of. You see people just more or less hanging out, employees and shoppers making new friends as they await to hear what exactly is happening outside those safe doors. So our Hannah Jewell, she is standing by now as we see more tactical officers actually going inside the building from one of our live pictures here. Hannah, you've been speaking with these people. You have been tweeting out this video, and it's that same story being echoed over and over again. A few gunshots, people didn't know what was going on, then they realized it was gunfire, chaos ensues.
Yes, Stephanie, and I actually got another update just a moment ago from the shoppers inside. They told me that they were in the process of being vetted and being released by law enforcement, but then they heard some shouting outside and they were told to come back inside the store, so they are now sheltering in place again. They say that law enforcement is inside the store with them in the back of this store, so this is still a very active situation. It sounds like we're keeping our ears to the ground and we're talking to these shoppers inside. They want their families to know that they are safe. They haven't heard of anything else. This shouting is the first that they've heard since the shooting about 2.5 hours ago. But they want their families to know that they're safe. That's why they have their cell phones plugged into the walls. They're speaking to their families. They're speaking to us. So we have that direct contact right now. Again, some sort of shouting in the hall. They went back into the store. They're still waiting and hoping to be released soon, but they're back in that back room again at this time, hoping to send us another update in a few minutes.
And Hannah, I think we got to give retailers a lot of credit here. They seem like they had a plan because they were instantly, and maybe you can attest to this, accommodating of the shoppers in their store and obviously the staff. And we have to remember, this is a mall. A lot of the staff are very young workers in a lot of these stores, but a lot of the retailers were very quick to get people to safety here.
Absolutely. That's what I'm hearing from these shoppers. They say they're grateful that it seems as though they had a plan to know exactly what to do when this happened. They had everybody go to the back, away from the windows. They locked the doors. They say they feel like they're in good hands, that they're safe. And again, they just wanted to get the word out to everybody else that they are safe, and they're just hunkering down at this time.
You hope you never have to go to that safety plan, but at least you have one and you are prepared just in case something like this does happen. Hannah, thank you.
Now, we just got word from the Wauwatosa Police Department. They are delaying the news conference that was set for now at 5:45 by 10 minutes. We know this is an ever-changing situation, Angelica. We know it's active. We know it's fluid. We were expecting the potential of a delay. So again, we've been delayed by 10 minutes. So of course, we'll bring that to our viewers live right here. But we hear that you have some new information, some more people you've spoken with.
Yeah, and again, that press briefing delayed by 10 minutes, but just want to recap what we know so far. So as I've been saying, we were pushed back to this side of Mayfair Road because the parking lot was not deemed safe as of yet. Again, law enforcement, we continue to see them canvass the perimeter, checking every inch of this space, again, as the shooter is at large. And as I mentioned before, there are a lot of cameras in this mall. So of course, besides securing the scene, making sure people are safe, I'm sure right now security and law enforcement are going through those cameras, images. Was there a vehicle? Was the suspect or suspects on foot? And do they have a description at this time? Because again, at last check, the shooter or shooters in this case are still at large. And again, we are waiting for that press briefing with law enforcement. Multiple people were shot today. Thankfully, none of these are non-fatal injuries, but of course, you know, as we've covered before, when you are shot, it is still a significant injury and it could have serious health complications in the future. So loved ones that we spoke with who've had family directly impacted. We spoke to one family who had their uncle who was working inside who was shot in the leg twice. You know, they're angry, they're terrified. As everybody here is curious, what is the motive behind something like this? We're so close to the holidays. People were going about their business, especially those employees that were just going about their day, and suddenly they were put in a situation that no one ever wants to be put in. Of course, we've been talking about how they were prepared. They had a plan and they followed it. And of course, many shoppers, I'm sure, are very grateful for those employees and their help. We are seeing an ambulance coming to the scene, turning away to something else. But again, here we are seeing law enforcement continuing to have a presence here, canvassing the area as they are securing the scene while we wait for this press briefing, which was delayed by 10 minutes. But again, what we know is that multiple people were shot today, non-fatal injuries. The shooter is still at large at this present time. Back to you.
All right, Angelica, we appreciate that. Brett Lemoyne standing by now for us. Brett, we know that you've been speaking with a lot of people who have been making their way out of Mayfair Mall. We see the bus there behind you. We do know that some of the buses to Mayfair are currently unable to enter the property, affecting some routes. So if you are a bus taker, make sure you take a look at what's going on in terms of the live situation there. But Brett, what are you hearing?
Yeah, and Stephanie, I wanted to point out that bus behind me because, as you can see, it is packed, which is an unusual sight, even around Mayfair Mall, to see a bus that packed, and it is leaving the property now. So it's unclear if these are individuals who were, gathering and had no other way of getting out, and that the bus is taking them to another location. I'm not sure, but it certainly is noteworthy, especially because we've been seeing a lot of other cars, a lot of other traffic coming out from this exit here at 104th and North, leaving Mayfair Mall now. As we had said even just 50 minutes ago, police were not letting anyone in or out of the mall. That seems to have changed now. But we're also seeing lots of other police vehicles from neighboring. And you can see Milwaukee County Transit.
Hey, Brett, we have to cut you off here because we're hearing
that.
from law enforcement officials. Press conference just started. Let's listen in.
The northwest entrance to Macy's. Wauwatosa police officers and Wauwatosa Fire Department personnel responded. When emergency personnel arrived, the shooter was no longer at the scene. 7 injured adults and 1 injured teenager were transported to the hospital by Wauwatosa Fire Department. The extent of their injuries is unknown at this time. Everybody was alive at that time, though, so there's not been any fatalities that I'm aware of. Numerous law enforcement agencies are assisting with clearing the Mayfair Mall property. Those who are seeking to reunify with anyone who is at Mayfair Mall should go to the reunification area located at the At Home store, 3201 North Mayfair Road. That's just north of Burleigh Street. Preliminary statements from witnesses indicate that the shooter is a white male in his 20s or 30s. Investigators are working on determining the identity of that suspect. Any information reporting the shooter's identity at this time is false. Mayfair Mall remains closed and will be closed until further notice. The crime scene is active, and we ask members of the public to remain away from the area and be patient so that our law enforcement personnel may secure the scene and investigate. Our Public Information Office will release accurate information as it becomes available. I'm hoping that maybe later this evening, if we have any more information, we'll give it to you then, but that's really about all I got right now, so thank you. We don't know that. We don't know this, so thank you very much.
You've been listening live to an update from Wauwatosa Police. This is the first information we're hearing. We want to listen in live here. I'm assuming this is the press information officer.
On your outlets as well. Any new information we will push out on Facebook or Twitter, the official Wauwatosa Police Department accounts.
Should the public be concerned right now?
We are, again, it's an active crime scene. We're gathering information. We put out what we know. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right, so just to kind of recap just a little bit here, they do not know whether or not the suspect is still inside the mall or somewhere else. So that is the most important point of information we want to pass along to you right now. We are told that the suspect is believed to be a white male in his 20s or 30s. We do know there were 8 victims total, 7 adults and 1 teenager. We're told all were alive when they were transported away to the hospital. But at this point, their injuries, the extent of their injuries, are still unknown. At this time, they are working to clear the mall. They are going store by store. There are 160 of them inside Mayfair, trying to make sure that the suspect is not still inside that mall. And of course, there are still people, employees as well as other shoppers who were inside the mall who are still waiting to be cleared and to come out safely. Mayfair Mall, Ben, it's closed until further notice at this point.
Yeah, don't go there. This is important. If you have a family member that you've been trying to get in contact with and you want to, they call it reunification, if you want to get back in touch with them, they have made a place for that to happen where employees and people who are safely removed from the mall will be taken. And I would not be surprised. We saw that full bus moments ago from Brett Lemoyne. I would not be surprised if that's where that bus is taking those people. It is the At Home store that is just north of Burleigh. So we're going to send a crew over there. But if you're watching right now and you've been probably talking with your loved ones on text message who are stuck inside the mall and you want to reconnect with them as soon as possible, the place you need to go is the At Home store, because that is where that is going to happen.
And at this point, All we know is that there is one suspect law enforcement is looking for, a white male in his 20s or 30s. And as you saw from the female police officer who was addressing the reporters there at the end of the press conference, it seems like the scene is still pretty chaotic. They're still trying to gather everything. They're trying to figure out whether or not the suspect is inside the mall or whether he's at large out in the community. We're going to go live now to our Bill Miston, who was listening in on that press conference there. Bill, we got some information. We learned about the victims. We learned a little bit about the shooter. But of course, there's still tons of questions left.
A lot of questions, Steph, that we are still going to have to wait for. And that's something that the police impressed upon the public, really, is to please take time with this. Please understand that this is a situation that is developing and it's going to take some time to sort it all out. But again, just to recap what was just said at a press conference, that really brief press conference that ended moments ago without police taking any questions from the media, is that it was shortly before 3 o'clock, at around 2:50, that 911 call started to come in to Mayfair Mall. That's when police and fire crews arrived, and they went to the northwest entrance of Macy's where a shooting took place. Now, there are a number of people still inside the mall, and that a number of law enforcement officers and multiple agencies, an alphabet soup of agencies, are here working to systematically clear the mall. It's very important to do that. Even though that police said that they do not believe that the shooter is still on scene, that they are going to be systematically clearing the mall to make sure that it is safe. And as you said, if you are waiting to get in touch with your loved ones who might still be inside or being brought outside by those law enforcement officers, to head to the at-home store at 3201 North Mayfair. Now, the shooter, the suspect that police believe is responsible, is a white male in his 20s and 30s. That's it. That's the only information that we have to go on right now. And they're asking that anyone with information that might have about this person or this shooting to please contact the Wauwatosa Police Department. 7, as far as the victims in this shooting, non-life-threatening injuries, no fatalities as far as what is known right now by police. 7 adults and 1 teenager were wounded. They were taken to the hospital. Again, non-life-threatening injuries. And so what police are asking right now is for any information about this incident, of who the suspect may be, if they know anything about this, to contact them. And they wanted to dispel rumors out there right now that are supposedly identifying the suspect as that they are false, flat out false. That's according to Wauwatosa Police Chief Barry Weber, who spoke again just moments ago, giving a brief statement to the media here on the southwest corner of the property of Mayfair Mall property. We're at North Avenue and Mayfair Avenue. A lot of activity still going on, and like we've been telling you all evening, police have the area cordoned off to prevent people from coming in and going out. Some of our crews, they have been pushed back. And so what we're needing to do right now is police are asking the public to just wait, and we should know more information if there is more information to give later tonight. Ben?
Hey,
Steph?
Bill, I thought this was pretty interesting. It seemed that the information had changed a little bit. The public information officer earlier on said non-life-threatening injuries, but in that press conference, the chief says the extent of the injuries were unknown. The 7 injured adults and 1 teen, when they left there, they were all alive, but could not give the extent of the injury. So that's something we're certainly going to have to clear up. Go ahead, Bill.
And that's a good point, Ben. And what we do know is that earlier on today, the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner said that they were not called to the incident here at Mayfair Mall. What Chief Barry Weber said is that there were no fatalities as far as he was aware of, but all those people were transported to the hospital. So hopefully those people are going to be okay, and hopefully those conditions don't change.
Yeah, he said when they left here, they left alive, but he didn't know their conditions right now. So we are thinking about those 8 people tonight. All right, Bill, stay on top of it. We'll get back to you in a moment here.
When it comes to the suspect, we do want to be very clear, as our Angelica Sanchez joins us live now. Police saying it's a white male in his 20s or 30s. Now, how do they know this information? Whether it's witness account or it's a mall. There's a lot of security cameras around there. So We potentially could expect a surveillance image of this suspect soon if they are still looking for this person out within the community. And when it comes to the parking lot, Angie, I know that they pushed you far back from the parking lot. You're now across the road on other public property there. They're likely looking for a vehicle associated with this suspect as well.
Yeah, you have to imagine that those are some of the questions that law enforcement immediately are asking. Was there a vehicle? Did the suspect flee, or is the suspect still inside of the mall? And again, you can just see the continuation of this law enforcement presence. And of course, it makes absolute sense why they told us earlier, about not 2 hours now earlier, when they told us to move back because the area was not secured. As you heard in the press briefing, they are not sure where the suspect is. So they're trying to canvass the area, making sure that the individual is, if they are still in the mall, that those people that are still in the mall are evacuated safely and away from harm. So law enforcement, again, working very hard this evening to track down the shooter. And as from what we know now, it appears this was a lone actor that was here in the mall when this shooting took place, and they're only looking for one individual. The only description we have right now is a white male between 20 to 30 years of age, and law enforcement is asking anybody, if you see a tip, please get that to their direction, but do not spread that misinformation. Law enforcement being very clear about that, saying that any real legitimate information on who the shooter is, that will be coming from the Wauwatosa Police Department or other law enforcement official. Do not share that on social media. Instead, share that information with them. They need our help at this time. Again, they have a lot on their hands as they're canvassing. What we've discussed is a very large mall. There were a lot of people inside. It was a Friday right before the holidays. So again, law enforcement asking anybody for information on who the potential shooter could be as they're trying to do their job. Help them. Do not spread misinformation at this time. But, you know, shoppers that we spoke with earlier, we've talked about how quickly everything unfolded. You had a quick decision to make if you were here. You either needed to move to the nearest exit or you just had to find a safe location. So take a listen to what one shopper told us when we arrived on the scene on her experience here.
I'm not sure we have that sound, Angelica. I know you. Oh, here we go.
I just went to the doctor's office and waiting for my daughter to get off, and that's where they told us to everybody get out.
Can you describe that? Were people running out?
They were walking real fast and just scooting out the door.
Yeah. How do you feel watching the scene right now?
Oh, I feel it's horrible. You know, I don't wish this upon nobody.
Absolutely. You do not wish this upon anybody. You do not wish any of this upon anybody. And again, we know that multiple people were shot today, and that those individuals at last check were all alive. That's what law enforcement said. They're all alive, and it was non-fatal injuries. But of course, we hope to learn more of those injuries and how they are doing at this present time. But again, there is still a very active manhunt for the person responsible for this. All we know about the description is that it's a white male between the ages of 20 to 30 years of age. Back to you.
All right, Angelica, thank you. It is the top of the hour now. Ben and I want to just bring all of our viewers back to the beginning when all of this started earlier this afternoon, just before 3 o'clock, when the first call started coming into police and dispatchers that there were shots fired inside the mall near the north end, near the Macy's. That's what you're looking at right now, the staging area. This is some video from earlier from our Skyfox drone up in the sky with the law enforcement presence there. And you see how many cars are in the parking lot, right? All of those shoppers were there. It's a Friday evening. We have learned some new information, Ben, from Wauwatosa Police just minutes ago.
7 injured adults, 1 teen, all taken to the hospital. Chief Barry Weber saying when they were taken, they were alive. Doesn't know the extent of their injuries. I have new information just coming from a source saying Governor Tony Evers has been briefed. That obviously is expected. State lawmakers also getting briefed. This also getting national attention now. Let's go to Aaron Mabin. He's learned new information. Aaron, what can you tell us?
Well, what we could tell from that news conference is this is still a very active situation. The chief giving us as much information as he could and then getting back to work there are challenges that first responders and law enforcement are facing right now. You have to think about it. Mayfair is a very large space that they are combing through to make sure that they have evidence, to make sure that everything is secure. All afternoon, we've been talking to people who heard the gunfire, who ran for their lives. A little bit earlier, I talked to a woman who was inside of Macy's in the shoe department with her children. When she heard the gunfire, she grabbed them and she ran with her family. Take a listen to that.
From what I experienced, I was in the shoe department at Macy's. Had my kids with me. My son is 8 and my daughter's 12. And I just tried on some shoes. I put them back in the box. I was about to walk up to the, cash register, and I hear this pop sound. It sounded like something dropped, something metal or something. And then right after that first one, it was just, pow, 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 pow. And I looked at the cashier. She just took off running. And at that moment, it was like, oh, that is a gunshot. And as I turned around, I saw people from everywhere, in the store just running. So I start to run. My son starts to run, and I'm looking to see where my daughter is, and she's sitting in one of the chairs, and she has her headphones on, so she didn't hear anything. And I was just so in shock, I couldn't even scream or anything like that. And she finally noticed that people were running, and she got up and ran too. And people were running past the nearest exit. I think they were just so confused and shocked. And so my kids and I darted out the exit closest to us, and we just ran and ran and ran. We had no idea where we were going. We were just running.
An incredibly frightening description of the moment gunfire began inside Macy's or inside Mayfair Mall this afternoon. Right now, I'm on the south side. All of that investigation happening on the north side, so we really can't see those flashing blue and red lights, but this is still a very active situation. Ben and Stephanie.
A harrowing situation for anyone, with children or not. Aaron, thank you.
We got Annie Schwartz on the phone. She's a law enforcement expert. She spent a long time with the Milwaukee Police Department. Annie, we're seeing these images coming out of the mall. 1.3 million square feet. What is happening inside the mall right now?
I can tell you from experience, not from personal knowledge, because obviously I'm here on the, watching this from the armchair, as are all of you. But I can tell you that what's likely happening inside right now is that the SWAT teams from all these different agencies are making a plan to clear the building. So imagine, just one store. Imagine one store with clothing racks and all the little crevices where they store things. They have to check every single square inch of that mall. So that's what the SWAT teams are doing. They are experienced in room clearing. They know how to do a grid search and how to do, how to do these things in the safest manner possible. Really frightening to hear Chief Weber say that the bad guy's out there someplace. And I don't know how much time elapsed between the sounds of the gunshots and when the area was able to be sealed off, because that's one of the big questions: is the shooter in there, or is he somewhere, in the area?
I think that's the most disconcerting part, Annie, is the fact that, we heard the press information officer say right there when a reporter asked, is that shooter inside? And they said, we're working on it. We're trying to figure that out. So the public, I'm sure, they want to know what's going on. They want this suspect apprehended. In terms of the potential of other weapons, so Annie, we've seen in situations like this, especially when they're clearing a really big area, law enforcement, they want to make sure there's nothing else in there that could potentially hurt them. Talk about that for a moment.
Sure. Well, that's exactly what you're seeing when you see these different units that are the explosive device units from different departments. That's what those people are doing there. Often in cases where you have mass shootings or active shooters, you will have the suspect leave a booby trap for law enforcement. Sometimes several booby traps. It has been a couple of hours. The suspect has had time to do that if it's something that he decided to do. So that is what that's what they're probably doing right now, is trying to clear these spaces as soon as possible. However, they still have to worry that there is some kind of a booby trap that could have been set by the suspect for police.
Yeah, tough job for law enforcement. Anyway, when we talk about buildings with cameras, I'm going to assume the Macy's store and the mall is flooded with cameras. It's now been 3 hours about since this shooting took place, and we know the FBI is involved here, State Patrol. Do you believe that law enforcement right now has seen the images of the suspect and who they're looking for?
My guess is that they have seen images, that they have a good description. He's not in custody, so they don't want to share a whole lot publicly about what or who he is. They would like him to get comfortable wherever it is he's hiding, so that they can locate him. There's a lot of drama surrounding this particular shooting. There has been. There's some dust-ups at the hospital right now among the different victims' families. So I think we're going to find out some interesting details about this one. But right now, the most important piece of this story is where is this guy and who is he?
Can you expand on the dust-ups that are happening at the hospital with family members? We haven't heard reports of that at this point.
Yeah, my understanding is that there may be some gang activity involved in this particular incident, and we might have a number of victims who knew each other. I don't have any more than that, but that's my understanding is that there are some dust-ups among family members at the hospital as well. So
that's really interesting to hear, Annie, and obviously that has not yet been confirmed from law enforcement. It was a really interesting point you mentioned. There's a reason that they're not giving us the details, and obviously the entire public would like all the details as soon as the shooting happened, but there's a reason law enforcement does that.
Of course there is, and that was always the challenge. When you come from being a reporter to being a police spokesperson, you really are nobody's friend, because what happens is you have to get out there and you have to understand what influences the investigation negatively, and that can be tough because, the news media exists to share the news, and people are all glued to their television sets right now, and they're looking for answers. They want to know if they're safe. They want to know if they should leave their house. Should I go anyplace? They want all those answers, and it's really tough for law enforcement when they just can't give those answers. So I understand the need for that kind of holding back of some of the information, but that can be a pretty hard pill for media to swallow sometimes, because we want more. We want to inform the audience. We want to let people know as much as we can. But right now, the number one question that everybody wants answered is, am I safe in my house? Or can I leave my house? And when is this person in custody? And is he the only one? So there are a number of questions to be answered out there.
It's a good point, and we really do appreciate your insight here, Annie. One last thing before we let you go. To the families who are watching at home who may have a loved one or a friend inside Mayfair, and maybe they haven't heard from that person because they had to dart away without their cell phone. So many of us don't remember cell phone numbers anymore. We have them saved in our phone, right? So you can't just call from somebody else's. What would you say to the families out there who are just waiting to hear whether or not their family's been impacted by this and if their loved one's okay?
Well, I just watched the news conference that Chief Weber gave, and he talked about a family reunification center. And the family reunification center is set up, my understanding is not far from the mall, but also typically law enforcement sets up a hotline so people can inquire on the safety of their loved one if they know it. But when the police say shelter in place, it means stay where you are. One of the things we know from a lot of debriefs that I've been involved in some of these active shooter and mass shooter incidents are that often the suspect is consuming media while he is on the run. We saw that in the Azana Spa shooting. We saw Radcliffe Houghton, was consuming media, was watching streaming video on his phone while he was hiding upstairs in Azana Spa. So that is why the law enforcement is so careful when they say to media, hey, could you please please don't show the aerial shots. Please don't show the location of officers. By the same token, you want to be careful on social media sharing your location. Hey, Mom and Dad, I'm okay. I'm in the coat room at Macy's, because we don't know where the shooter is.
Yeah,
so,
that's a really good point. Andy Schwartz, you say you're no one's friend. You're certainly ours tonight with that incredible insight. Hopefully we'll get back to you a little bit later here, but thank you so much for that incredible insight, especially what's going on at the hospital. That's something we're going to look into right now. Let's go over to Brett Lemoyne, new information. He's at the At Home store. This is the reunification center. And Brett, this is just north of the mall. Can you lay out where you are and what's happening?
Yeah, well, at the At Home store parking lot, just a few blocks away from Mayfair Mall. And I'll just remind you of the bus here, because this is what we saw just about 20 minutes ago at our last location that we were at. And it was leaving Mayfair Mall. You can see it's crowded and packed with people that are on board that bus, presumably to keep them warm and safe as they wait for their family members to come. You know, we've already seen a dad and a little boy run up to presumably a mom or a wife or loved one, give them a big hug, just absolutely tugging at your heartstrings here. A lot of people waiting, making calls to loved ones, letting them know that they're okay and where their location is. I just talked to a mom and her daughter. They said that they were in the store. They heard pop, 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 and they didn't know what it was. And then the second that they realized it was gunshots, they were ushered into the back of the store that they were in, and they said they were frightened. And in fact, the mom just started to cry as I spoke with her as she was waiting for her husband and the girl's father to come to this area here and be reunited. So we'll be speaking with a lot more of them in just a moment. But yes, as you suspected, Ben, that bus that we saw earlier tonight was taking people from Mayfair, from the mall, to this location. Again, presumably people that either didn't have access to their vehicle because of all of the police activity at the mall, or didn't have another way to get home. This is where they're at, and certainly if you're at home and you're wondering where your loved one is, this would be a good place to check out, Ben.
Yeah, At Home store just north of Burleigh. And we got to give some credit to the Milwaukee County Transit System. We see them outside fires often to help people warm up tonight. They are moving people from a mass shooting to a safe place to be reunited with their loved ones. All right, Brett, appreciate it.
We are hearing for the first time from Wauwatosa Police Chief Barry Weber. We heard from him just about 20 minutes ago. We want to bring that news conference to you now.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, the Wauwatosa Police Department is investigating a shooting incident that occurred at Mayfair Mall, 2500 North Mayfair Road. On this date, approximately 2:50 p.m., our dispatchers received some 911 calls reporting a shooting incident at the mall near the northwest entrance to Macy's. Wauwatosa police officers and Wauwatosa Fire Department personnel responded. When emergency personnel arrived, the shooter was no longer at the scene. 7 injured adults and 1 injured teenager were transported to the hospital by Wauwatosa Fire Department. The extent of their injuries is unknown at this time. Everybody was alive at that time, though, so there's not been any fatalities that I'm aware of. Numerous law enforcement agencies are assisting with clearing the Mayfair Mall property. Those who are seeking to reunify with anyone who is at Mayfair Mall should go to the reunification area located at the At Home store, 3201 North Mayfair Road. That's just north of Burleigh Street. Preliminary statements from witnesses indicate that the shooter is a white male in his 20s or 30s. Investigators are working on determining the identity of that suspect. Any information reporting the shooter's identity at this time is false. Mayfair Mall remains closed and will be closed until further notice. The crime scene is active, and we ask members of the public to remain away from the area and be patient so that our law enforcement personnel may secure the scene and investigate. Our Public Information Office will release accurate information as it becomes available. I'm hoping that maybe later this evening, if we have any more information, we'll give it to you then, but that's really about all I got right now, so thank you.
Still in the mall?
We don't know that.
Chief,
we don't know this.
What challenges are law enforcement facing right now?
So we were just hearing from Chief Barry Weber right there. It was about 20 minutes ago that he gave us that press briefing, but as you heard there at the end, they do not know if the suspect is inside the mall or out in the community at this point. Here is a description of the suspect: a white male in his 20s or 30s, still at large. Police are working to identify the suspect. So at this point, we do know there's one suspect they're looking for. A mall like Mayfair would likely have many, many security cameras. So whether or not they're getting that description from an image they saw on the cameras, or they're just getting that description from witness depictions as to what they specifically saw, we're not exactly sure. But this is what's happening right now. It's still an active situation. There are many, many law enforcement personnel within the mall going inch by inch, trying to find the perpetrator within the mall. But again, we have to imagine there's also law enforcement outside the mall at various other locations in the community searching there as well.
Yeah, not a great description. That obviously describes a lot of people, a white male in his 20s. Let's go to Bill Miston about this press conference. Annie Schwartz just told us a while ago, not surprising that we're getting a whole lot of information because this suspect is still at large. But I found it interesting, Bill, they did say they're seeing rumors on the internet, and those rumors, they're saying, are false.
Chief Barry Weber couldn't be more emphatic about that, as you just heard in that press conference that we just played back for you, that briefing that Chief Barry Weber gave, is that any instances of people claiming to have identified that shooter are false. What we do know, the shooter is a white male in his 20s or 30s, and as our law enforcement expert Annie Schultz said, is that they're keeping some of that information about what police officers know close to their vest right now because they are still looking for him. And police are still working on clearing the mall, and it's unknown if the shooter is still inside the mall or not. But what they do know is that they are looking for a suspect in his 20s or 30s, and it's a white male. And as Steph, as you were saying earlier, there are security cameras everywhere inside malls, and then even on properties that are adjacent to the mall. So what's being done, no doubt, is that police are looking at any type of evidence that was being able to be gleaned from witness accounts inside the mall, comparing that to the video to come up with the description that police have given out publicly. But again, a lot more information is being kept close as police are trying to still locate this suspect. And that press briefing, very brief, and what officials said is that if, not when, but if there is more information to be released, that it will come out. But they won't be doing these briefings as every little bit of information trickles out. They will give the information to the public as they can, and asking for the public to be patient with this as this investigation still continues to move forward, as families are reunited with their loved ones, as their loved ones are taken out of the mall and brought to the Family Reunification Center where our Brett Lemoyne is at right now. So again, lots of moving parts here, and still a lot of questions that police are not answering right now at this time, Ben.
All right, appreciate it, Bill. We know 7 injured adults, 1 teen. We don't know a whole lot of information about them, but we do know some information about one of the victims. And that is because Angelica Sanchez talked to their family. It was a worker inside the mall. Angie?
Yeah, that's right. And the worker was inside the mall when he was shot twice in the leg, according to his nephew. And his nephew, when he found out about the shooting, well, he just rushed to the mall, as did so many people who have loved ones who are either working inside or knew their loved ones was coming to the mall to do some holiday shopping or to get ready for the weekend. And yes, as you mentioned, you have a family that are learning or probably haven't been able to get a hold of their loved ones if they were a victim in this shooting. As we've learned, 7 adults and 1 teenager were victims of this gunfire. We just learned Children's Wisconsin, their public relations team, is saying that they did receive some patients from this shooting, but at this time they are not releasing information on how many. What we do know is a very vague description of the suspect, which is a white male between the ages of 20 to 30 years of age. And at least for now, we know that the individual acted suspected alone. That's what we know now, but I'm sure law enforcement is going through security cameras just as they are canvassing every inch of this property to see what kind of vehicle was the individual driving. Was a license plate caught? Was the individual on foot? And did the individual flee on foot, or are they perhaps still on this property? As again, we know there's a very active and intense search for the individual that caused this shooting. Again, 7 adults and 1 teenager were injured. At last check, these were all non-life-threatening injuries, but you know, we're talking about gunfire. We're talking about people that were just going about their day being victims of such senseless violence. So of course they're being rushed to area hospitals, getting some sort of treatment, and at last check we know that those injuries are non-fatal. But law enforcement asking the public to please do not spread misinformation on social media unless it's coming from a law enforcement source. They are asking for that information, any information on the suspect, be instead directed to them at this time, as they are still very much dealing with this situation. And, you know, we heard earlier, whatever information they have on the potential shooter, that information, they might be keeping some of that under wraps. Right now, all they're giving us is that it's a white male between the ages of 20 to 30 years of age. And of course, that is why they're asking people stay away from this area. This individual is still not in custody. It is not a good idea to come out here. But of course, we have learned Brett Lemoyne is at the reunification at the at-home store where loved ones can reunite with their family members, as this has been as what many witnesses have described, a very terrifying evening for everyone.
Absolutely, Angelica. And you know, it's going to take days for people to process this, especially those who were there at the mall when all of this unfolded. You know, children, you know, a teenager is shot here, so it's definitely going to take some time for everyone to recover and heal. But as you mentioned, this is very much still an active investigation. The suspect is not in police custody at this point. Police haven't said whether or not the suspect they believe is in the building or out in the community. They basically told us, we don't know. We're trying our best. We're trying to apprehend whoever this person might be. But we have to imagine that they are taking a look at all of that surveillance footage. They are taking a look at who was coming and going into the mall around 3 o'clock and what actually happened. And Angelica spoke to the nephew of a victim, a man who actually owns several kiosks that are typically in the central aisles of the mall. And that man was shot twice in the leg. So that tells us, you know, it may have been out in kind of the thoroughfare of the mall, or it may have been inside a store. We're not exactly sure at this point. These are all questions that we're trying to get answered for you. But we do know it was in this northwest corner of the mall where all of this unfolded about 3.5 hours ago.
And I want to just clear something up. We did hear early on, police told us non-life-threatening injuries, but then just a few minutes ago when the chief spoke, he said, well, when everybody left here, they were alive. I don't know the extent of their injuries now. So that's obviously a very different statement than non-life-threatening. We don't know the extent of the injuries right now, but we are thinking of them, including that individual, an immigrant from Pakistan who owned a couple of those kiosks in the mall, came to America for a better life, and today at around 3